Have you not heard? Has it not been told? There is a story of old.
Archbishop Dominiquae Bierman has traveled the world for over 3 decades proclaiming the gospel from Zion to the nations with miracles following. She exposes the false doctrines of replacement theology and preaches restoration to the Jewish Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach.
That a lion has defeated a dragon. A lion has defeated a dragon. A lion has defeated a dragon. The Lion of Judah has defeated the dragon.
Hallelujah. Today we're going to learn about a remarkable young woman. A woman that I call her a woman that's greater than life. And even though the story is mostly about her father, and yet the real heroine of the story is actually his daughter. And I'm talking about the daughter of Yiftach, the judge of Israel that is mentioned about in Judges 11. We're going to read the story. We're going to learn who he was, why was he chosen by Yahveh to help Israel, because at the time, Israel without a king, and every time Yah would raise up judges for Israel to help them against their enemies, and Yiftach was one of those judges, and he was called Yiftach HaGiladi, or Yiftach the Gileadite, because he came from the Gilad across the Kinneret, the Sea of Galilee. And we're going to go ahead and read the story about her father so we understand the story about the daughter. It's a very tragic story, really, but here we go. Judges 11, 1 to 11. Now Yiftach the Gileadite was a mighty man of valor, but he was a son of a prostitute, while Gilad was Yiftach's father. But Gilad's wife bore him sons, and when the wife's sons grew up, they drove Yiftach out and said to him, "You won't inherit in our father's house, for you are a son of another woman." Then Yiftach fled from his brothers and lived in the land of Tov. Some worthless fellows joined with Yiftach and went out with him. Now it came about after a while that the children of Ammon fought with Israel. When the children of Ammon, which is today across the Jordan, when the children of Ammon made war against Israel, the elders of Gilad went to fetch Yiftach from the land of Tov. They said to Yiftach, "Come and be our chief so we may fight the children of Ammon." Yiftach then said to the elders of Gilad, "Didn't you hate me and drive me out of my father's house? So why are you coming to me now that you are in trouble? Here is why we are now turning to you," the elders of Gilad said to Yiftach. "Come with us, fight the children of Ammon, the Ammonites, and then you will become head over all the inhabitants of Gilad, right across the Sea of Galilee." So Yiftach said to the elders of Gilad, "If you take me back home to fight the children of Ammon, and Adonai gives them over to me, I should become your head." The elders of Gilad said to Yiftach, "Let Yahveh be witness between us if we don't do as you say." Then Yiftach went with the elders of Gilad, and the people made him head and chief over them, after Yiftach repeated all his terms before Yahveh at Mitzpah. So here we have a story. A rejected boy, the son of a prostitute. His father was Gilad, and he was hated because he was the son of a prostitute. How many times people just hate people because their birth was not right? Can I tell you something? So many of us. In fact, the Bible says that all of us are born in sin. So there's not even one that is righteous before Yahveh. But of course, at that time, it was even harder. Yeshua hadn't come yet. And he hadn't showed us the way out of this. But we see that he grew up in rejection. He was rejected. Reminds me a little bit of Jabez in the book of Chronicles. He's born in grief. He's born in rejection. And this man, we know that, when people are rejected and they're born in grief and people don't want to be with them and, the society doesn't accept them, very often they turn to crime. And they go to the streets and they get all kinds of friends, and that are dubious friends, or friends that are involved themselves in crime because they themselves have felt maybe rejected and society didn't accept them, and misery kind of keeps company. Except apparently he was a man of war. He was a muscle man. He was strong. And now there was war with the Ammonites. And the Ammonites were fierce. And they had a lot better weapons than Israel had. And so here the elders of Gilad, because the elders, they're the ones that rule in the city and rule in the country, that they had rejected Yiftach. The elders of Gilad that didn't want anything to do with Yiftach, now they begin to romance him back. We need your muscles. We need your help. We need your strength. The enemy is coming against us. And so Yiftach, for the first time, is accepted socially, but he knows better. He knows that he's not so much accepted socially as this is out of interest and they need him. And so he comes, he makes a bargain with them, and they said, sure, if you win the war, if we see that Yah is with you, then we are going to make you our head. You will become the president of Gilad. You will become the judge of Gilad. Except he doesn't believe them. So what he does, he goes to Mitzpah. You see, at that time, Jerusalem wasn't established yet as the center of spiritual worship. But there was another place there, it was Mitzpah. And he goes to Mitzpah, where there was a high place there where they would sacrifice to Yahveh. And he goes before God. And so we can see that Yiftach is actually a man that fears Yah. He fears God. And we can see that he's got faith, because he goes before God and he gives all the terms before the Almighty, so that Yahveh is his witness of the terms with the elders of Gilad. So far so good. Now he's accepted. Now he's a valiant warrior. Now he goes to battle, and we will see what happens to him next. We're going to go to Judges 11:23-25. So he goes into the battle, and this is what Judges tells us about this battle. So now Yahveh, God of Israel, dispossessed the Amorites from before his people Israel. So he goes to talk now with the Ammonites, and he tells them, who are you that you're coming against the inheritance of the Lord? Now Yahveh, God of Israel, dispossessed the Amorites from before his people Israel. So should you possess their land? Don't you possess what Chemosh, your God, gives you to possess? He's talking to them spiritual. He's saying, you got your God, we've got Yahveh. Now your God gives you stuff to possess. Our God has given us Israel to possess. He's given us the land all the way from the Nile to the Euphrates to possess. Why are you coming to contest us in the land that is given to us by our God? Your God gives you whatever he gives you. Allah gives you what he gives you. Yahveh gives us what he gives us. Chemosh gives what he gives. Yahveh gives what he gives. And he gave the people of Israel from the Nile to the Euphrates. So what are you coming to fight us, he says, to the Ammonites? In other words, we can see that this Yiftach knows his covenant. He knows his covenant. He may have been the son of a prostitute. He may have been ostracized by, his Israeli peers, but he knows his covenant. And therefore he comes and he says, likewise, whatever Yahveh our God has dispossessed from before us, this we will possess. Besides, are you any better than Balak, son of Zippor, the king of Moab? Did he ever strive against Israel, or did he ever fight against them? In other words, did he prevail? You remember the situation with Balaam, when he was calling on Balaam, that was a wizard, to curse Israel. But then the angel of the Lord stood there and became a Satan to Balaam and stopped him from cursing Israel, and Balaam couldn't but bless Israel. So anyways, he went and he contested with them. But he didn't contest with them on the basis of his muscles. He contested with them on the basis of the covenant. So you can see that somehow Yiftach, even though his birth was not very stellar, he was a man of the covenant. And then the scripture tells us here at the end the most important phrase. It says, and Yahveh anointed him. Because Yahveh anoints always when people fight on the basis of the covenant. And then in Judges 11:29 it says, then the Ruach Adonai, the Spirit of Adonai, came upon Yiftach, so he marched through Gilad and Menashe and passed through Mitzpah at Gilad, and from Mitzpah of Gilad he crossed over to the children of Ammon. In other words, they were all the way from here towards the south, and then he crossed over across the Jordan to the children of Ammon, today Jordan of today. And Yiftach vowed to him this. Now this is where the heroine of the story begins to come into the picture. Because Yiftach made a vow, but we could never understand this vow if we don't understand that Yiftach was a man of his word, a man of the covenant. He believed in the God of Israel, and therefore he had a lot of value to him besides his muscles. And here it comes, and he made a vow to Yahveh. Judges 11:30-33. Then Yiftach vowed a vow to Yahveh and said, if you will indeed give the children of Ammon into my hand, then it will be that whatever comes, remember the word whatever, not whoever, whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me when I return safely from the children of Ammon, it will be Yahveh's, and I will offer it up as a burnt offering. So Yiftach crossed over to the children of Ammon to fight against them, and Yahveh gave them into his hand. So he utterly defeated them from Aroer until you come to Minit, 20 towns, and as far as Abel Kramim. So the children of Ammon were subdued before Bnei Israel, the sons of Israel. Wow. So here we see that he didn't trust his muscles. He knew that unless Yahveh would be on his case, he would not win the battle. And so he goes and he vows, he makes a vow. He says, if you, now that's very common throughout the scriptures, that people make a vow. If you bring me safe, then I will give you this. I remember one time, I'm sure my husband is giggling right now because he knows that there is a story when he was preaching the gospel in India. And many people were getting healed, and all the preachers were arrested by the Hindus there because they were accused that they were healing without a license. Imagine that. But it was the power of Yah that was healing. But my husband did not go to the meeting where they were all arrested. He was very tired and he fell asleep. It was very hot. And he had begun to write, actually at that time, a whole teaching about women in ministry, because in India, many women are treated like furniture. So Yah was giving him a special message about women in leadership and women in ministry that eventually became his amazing book, The Woman Factor. Everybody should read that book, The Woman Factor. I'm telling you, people buy it by the cases because it's such an important book for the times that sets both the women and especially the men free from the bias and the stigma against women in ministry. But he wasn't arrested. But what we heard, I was in Israel at the time, what we heard is that the whole team had been arrested. And I went before Yah and I said, Lord, if you bring him safe and sound, I will never complain about him anymore as long as I live. Did you see that? And so I made the same, you know. And well, the plane lands in Israel that should have been bringing him, and he was not in the plane. And I was saying, Lord, if you bring him back, you know, safe and sound, I will never complain about him as long as I live. He was not in the plane, and of course I was so concerned about him. But I had a peace inside of me, but my soul was racing, you know. What happened is that he managed to escape, and he was the only one that was not arrested. And then he went preaching to many other villages and many other places, and he came back a few days later. About a week later, I think it was, that he came back. But during that week, I was sweating tears. I was believing, that he was okay, but at the same time, I was really concerned about him. So here we have, Yiftach. He also is about to enter into a battle of which he may not come back alive. And he says, okay, Abba, hallelujah, I make a vow before you. Whatever comes out, I will offer it as a sacrifice to you. But he was not banking on what would happen next. And indeed, Yahveh gives him the victory. And you know what that means? That he will now become the head of all Gilead. All the tribes of Israel now will have him as the judge, as the president, even though he was the son of a prostitute.
I hope you're enjoying this program about the powerful women of the Bible. Actually, I had a problem with women in leadership, and I wrote a book to help you. I invite you to get my book, The Women Factor, and be set free.
I am immovable in you, unshakable in you, and I am full of grace. I am immovable in you, unshakable in you, and I am full of faith. Your word.
And in Judges 11, he comes back from the war victorious, euphoric. Yahveh has won the battle for him. Judges 11:34 to 35. Now when Yiftach arrived at his home in Mitzpah, behold, his dog, no. Behold, his sheep, no. Behold, his servant, no. Behold, his lion, no. No. Behold, his daughter was coming out to meet him with tambourines and with dances. Can you imagine this young maiden, excited, so proud of her father? She comes out with tambourine and dances, honor the father as a glorious hero. Imagine this daughter for a moment, young maiden. Later on we will see that she's a virgin. She had not known a man. She wants to honor her daddy. She knows that her father has gone through so much rejection. Of course, you know, she grew with him. She saw how he was ostracized, how he was isolated, how he was disregarded by the other brethren. She knew that for her father this victory meant so much. It meant acceptance. It meant restoration. And of course, you know, if the father was ostracized and rejected, of course the daughter had suffered from that as well. Not only the father was suffering, but of course if the father is looked upon that way, then all of his offspring is looked upon also with disrespect and disregard. And again, we're talking about people that, you know, can be narrow-minded, and they're all living in a close proximity, and they know each other. So for her to honor her father was so important. So she probably overtakes the dog. Maybe the dog was running to meet the master too, but she overtakes the dog. In fact, she probably was sitting at the lattice of the window, and she was just looking for him, just waiting for him to arrive. She had her tambourines ready. She had her dancing garments ready. She had become beautified especially to honor her father. And the moment that she hears from afar the voice of her father, the dog tries to run to the door first. Maybe the goat tries to run to the door first. Maybe the sheep tries to run to the door first. But no, the daughter of Yiftach says, "Get away from me. I am going to honor my father." And she overtakes them all. She comes out, tambourines, dances, praises. Little did she know what he had vowed. Little did she know. So she comes out to meet him. And this is what the scriptures tell us. Now she was his only child. What does that mean, she was his only child? It means that she was the apple of his eye. If you have one child and one child only, then all of your fatherly love will go to that child. All of your motherly love will go to that child. She was his only child. He was proud of her. He loved her. He cherished her. Which, you know what? This whole encounter of her coming to honor her father shows us that he was a good father. It shows us that he was a loving father. Because if he wouldn't have been a loving father, then his daughter wouldn't have taken the tambourine and dances and gone to greet him. She would have hidden somewhere and let the dog overtake her. But we understand from this that he loved her. In other words, there's one more quality to Yiftach that had such a dubious birth and was so ostracized and rejected. And yet you could see that there is some very good qualities here. And another quality to this Yiftach is that he was a loving, cherishing father. She was his only child. Besides her, he had no son or daughter. Upon seeing her, he tore his clothes and said, "Alas, my daughter, you made me bow down in grief. You have made me miserable, for I have opened my mouth to Adonai, and I cannot take it back." So he comes back euphoric. She is euphoric. I want you to understand the feelings of the moment. And in one split of a second, that euphoria becomes mourning. Because when he sees her, he tore his garments. And you know, the tearing of the garment in the Torah, in the Bible, represents mourning. For example, my son passed away not long ago. He was only 35. And when I went to bury him in Israel, then the rabbi came to me and to my daughter Adi, my second child. She's my first child. My son Yuval was my second child. And the rabbi comes and he asked me, and he said, "Do you want to tear your garments?" He says, "Absolutely." I was in mourning, and I tore my shirt. I especially went with a sweater. It was very cold at the time because it was in January. And I tore my sweater, and when I did that, it was like I was tearing my heart. I was in mourning. My son of 35 years old had died in a tragic way, and it broke my heart. So I understand Yiftach how he felt at that moment. Any father, any mother would have felt the same and would have tore that garment as a sign of the tearing and the breaking of the heart. And then he says, "You have made me miserable." The daughter wanted to make him happy, but she made him miserable because she didn't know what he had vowed. What a heartbreaking turn of the story. And what he says here, he says, "I cannot take the vow back." But why cannot he take the vow back? Okay, God, I didn't mean to. Okay, you know that I meant my dog or my sheep or my goat. I didn't mean to sacrifice my daughter. But remember what we've told about Yiftach until now? That Yiftach was a man of his word. And Yiftach had the qualities of integrity that made him a valiant warrior, and that Yahveh himself would endorse, and a man of the covenant. And therefore he feared he feared God, and he knew that according to the scriptures, well, he may not have known the scriptures, but he knew that if you make a vow to the Most High, you need to keep the vow to the Most High, even if it hurts you. And let's go to check it out in Psalms 15, 1-4. A psalm of David. Adonai, who may dwell in your tent? Who may live on your holy mountain? The one who walks with integrity, who does what is right and speaks truth in his heart, who does not slander with his tongue, does not wrong his neighbor, and does not disgrace his friend, who despises a vile person in his eyes, but honors those who fear Yahveh, who keeps his oath even when it hurts and does not change. Who may abide in your tabernacle? Who may be in your presence? He that keeps his oath and does not change. And so, Yeshua said at some point, let your yes be yes and let your no be no. Everything else is from the evil one. In other words, he said, keep your word. And keep your vows to the Most High. It's better not to vow than to vow rashly. But once you vow rashly or you consecrate something rashly, then, it is very tricky. Now, he was a man of his word and he feared Yahveh, but apparently his daughter was not any far from him. And you know the proverbial saying that says that the apple didn't fall too far from the tree? Well, we see that Yiftach's daughter had exactly the same qualities that her father had. Not for nothing, she became the heroine of the story. She adored her father because the man had overcome so much, and now he was a hero of war. And she honored and she feared Yahveh. And of course, she said to him clearly, you know, no, father, you know, you cannot tell it. Look what Matthew 5:34-37 says. But I tell you, do not swear at all, not by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is the footstool of his feet, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make a single hair white or black, but let your word yes be yes, and your no be no. Anything more than that is of the evil one. Wow. In Ecclesiastes 5:3-6, it says, when you swear a vow to God, don't delay in fulfilling it, for it takes no delight in fools. Pay what you vow. It is better for you not to vow than to vow and not pay. Don't let your mouth lead your flesh to sin, and don't say before the messenger, it was a mistake. Why should Elohim be angry at your voice and destroy the work of your hands? Many dreams and many words are meaningless, therefore fear God. Fear Elohim. So here we see the importance of that. The daughter of Yiftach feared God, and she said, my father, you've opened your mouth to Yahveh. She said to him, do to me what proceeded from your mouth, since Yahveh brought vengeance on your enemies, the children of Ammon. She said further to her father, let this thing be done for me. Let me be alone 2 months, so that I may go on to the mountains and mourn my virginity and my companions. Go, he said. So he sent her away for 2 months. So she left, she and her companions, and mourned on the mountains because of her virginity. Then at the end of 2 months, she returned to her father, who did with her according to his vow he had made. So she was never intimate with a man. So it became a custom in Israel that the daughters of Israel would go annually to commemorate the daughter of Yiftach the Gileadite 4 days in a year. What courageous, selfless, and humble girl that I call her greater than life.
I love my wife's new album called Tribute to the Jew in You. I listen to it in the car all the time. You need to get it.
Do not delay your revival, Yahveh. Pour out your ruach like wine. Pour out your spirit like water, Adonai. Anoint your bride.
If you enjoyed today's program, support this broadcast by donating to kad-esh.org. To connect with us, write to info@kad-esh.org or mail to 52 Tuscan Way, Suite 202-412, St. Augustine, Florida, 32092, USA. Or call us at 1-972-301-7087. We'd love to hear from you. And join us again next week.
Anoint